The glass slipped from Daniella's fingers. Not because she was clumsy, not because she was nervous. It slipped because the woman standing across the penthouse living room had just said, loudly enough for 12 dinner guests to hear, asterisk, be careful with that. It costs more than your entire family makes in a year. Laughter. Soft, practiced, the kind that people make when they want to belong to a room. Daniella crouched to collect the pieces. Her uniform, white blouse, black skirt, the agency's embroidered logo on the chest, pulled tight at her knees as she worked. She kept her eyes down. She had learned in the 2 months since taking this position that keeping her eyes down was the only currency that kept her employed. They always send these girls and expect us to be grateful, Soo-Yeon said, refilling her own wine glass without offering to help. She was 30, sharp-featured, dressed in a cream silk dress that probably cost more than Daniella's rent. She wore Minho's ring on her finger like a weapon. At least try to look like you know what you're doing. One of the male guests cleared his throat. Nobody else moved. Daniella straightened. She carried the broken glass toward the kitchen without a word. The guests returned to their conversations. The pianist in the corner resumed playing. The evening continued as if Daniella were furniture that had briefly malfunctioned. She didn't cry in the kitchen. She was 27 years old and she had stopped crying in other people's kitchens at 23. Instead, she wrapped the glass in cloth, disposed of it properly, and stood at the sink for exactly 30 seconds with her eyes closed. Her mother had raised her on 2 things, dignity and patience. They are not the same thing, her mother used to say. Dignity you keep, patience you spend. Spend it wisely. She had been spending a lot of patience lately. Minho arrived at 9:47 p.m. Daniella knew this because she had been watching the door. Not for him specifically, she watched every entrance and exit as part of her job, tracking when guests arrived, when trays needed refreshing, when conversations shifted and appetites changed. She was good at this. She was, despite what Soo-Yeon believed, exceptional at this. He walked in wearing a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his shirt open. He was the kind of handsome that arrived without announcing itself, strong jaw, dark eyes, the quiet confidence of a man who had never needed to raise his voice to own a room. He was 35, though he moved like someone who had lived twice that. Soo-Yeon crossed the room to him immediately. "You're late," she said it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Business," he kissed her cheek. His eyes moved across the room in a single sweep, the kind of sweep that noticed everything. They paused briefly on Daniella. She looked away first. She always looked away first. By 11 o'clock, the guests had thinned. Daniella was clearing the far end of the dining table when she heard Soo-Yeon's voice drift from the hallway lower now, but still carrying that edge. "She broke a glass, right in front of the Kims. I was mortified." "Accidents happen," Minho's voice flat. "With her it's always something. I've been telling the agency we need someone else, someone who fits the environment better." A pause, loaded and deliberate. "You know what I mean." Silence from Minho. "I don't think I do," he said finally. "Oh, don't be difficult tonight. I'm not in the mood." "I said I don't think I do. Explain what you mean." Another pause, then heels on tile, moving away. Soo-Yeon's signature retreat when a conversation stopped going her way. Daniella stacked plates carefully. Her hands were steady. Her chest was not. She was gathering her bag from the service room at 11:30 when Minho appeared in the doorway. She startled. He raised one hand slightly, not an apology, just an acknowledgement. "I wanted to apologize," he said, "for earlier." "It wasn't your doing." She kept her voice professional, neutral, the voice she used when she needed to remind herself she was working. "No," he leaned against the doorframe, "but it happened in my home." She looked at him properly for the first time. There was something in his expression she hadn't expected, not pity, not the guilty performance of a man trying to feel better about his girlfriend's behavior. Something more like recognition, as if he understood what it cost her to stand in that room and say nothing. "I'm fine," she said. "You're good at pretending you are." The words landed somewhere she hadn't prepared for. She zipped her bag and straightened. "I'll see myself out, Mr. Choi." "Min-ho." She stopped. "My name is Min-ho," he said it simply. "Not Mr. Choi, not sir, just Min-ho." She didn't respond to that. She thanked him for the correction in a way that committed to nothing, and she left. She took the service elevator down to the street, stepped out into the cold city air, and stood there for a moment. Something felt wrong about tonight. Not Soo-Yeon's cruelty, that was familiar territory. Something else. Something she couldn't place. She pulled out her phone to call her ride. There was a message already waiting. Unknown number. Sent at 9:52 p.m., 5 minutes after Min-ho had walked through the door. "You need to leave that job. Tonight, don't go back." She stared at it. Below it, 3 seconds later, a second message arrived. "You don't know what you're cleaning up after." Daniella didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed in her small apartment with the phone in her hands, the two messages glowing on the screen like a warning she didn't know how to decode. She had read them 40 times. She had typed and deleted responses twice. She had Googled the number and found nothing. At 2 a.m., she put the phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. "You don't know what you're cleaning up after." The thing was, she did know something. Not everything. Not enough. But something had been sitting at the back of her mind for 6 weeks, quiet and uncomfortable, the way a splinter sits under skin before it becomes a problem. She had found the first thing by accident. A document left on the kitchen counter beneath a fruit bowl, half covered by a newspaper. She hadn't read it intentionally. She had moved the newspaper to wipe the counter and the words had simply been there, names, numbers, a column of figures that didn't look like any household accounting she had ever seen. She had placed the newspaper back. She had wiped the counter. She had said nothing. The second thing was a photograph. Inside a kitchen drawer she had opened looking for a serving spoon. A man she didn't recognize, sitting across a restaurant table from Min-ho. Unremarkable, except that the man in the photograph had been on the news 3 days later, not for anything good. She had placed the spoon back. She had closed the drawer. She had said nothing. Because Daniella Park, her mother was Korean American, her father Nigerian, had grown up understanding one fundamental truth about being a black woman in rooms where you were already underestimated. The moment you become inconvenient, you disappear. Not metaphorically. She had watched it happen to her cousin, to her aunt's colleague. You see something you're not supposed to see, you say something you're not supposed to say, and suddenly the world has no record of you. So she had kept her eyes down. She had spent her patience. She had said nothing. But someone knew she had seen it. She went back. She knew she shouldn't, but she needed the paycheck. Her mother's medication didn't pause for instinct, and she told herself she would be careful. She told herself one more week. The penthouse was quiet when she arrived the next morning. Soo-Yeon was out. The housekeeper coordinator, a stiff woman named Mrs. Beek who communicated exclusively through clipped instructions, handed Daniella a revised list and disappeared. Daniella worked through the rooms methodically. Living area, dining room, the study, which she had always been instructed to clean only the surfaces and never the desk. She cleaned only the surfaces. She did not touch the desk. She was turning to leave when she saw it. A burner phone, sitting in the gap between the bookshelf and the wall, angled in a way that suggested it had been placed there deliberately rather than dropped. The screen was off, but the case was distinctive, matte red, a small gold emblem on the back she had seen before. On Soo-Yeon's keychain. Daniella's hand moved before her caution did. She picked it up. One message in the outbox, sent last night at 11:48 p.m., 17 minutes after Daniella had left the building. She's seen too much. She needs to go before the handover. The recipient was saved under a single letter, K. Daniella put the phone back exactly as she found it. She walked to the bathroom, turned on the cold tap and pressed both wrists under the running water. Her mother's trick for panic. Cool the pulse points, slow the tide. She thought about the unknown messages on her own phone. She thought about who might have sent them. She thought about Min-ho standing in the doorway of the service room, watching her with that expression she hadn't been able to name. Recognition, she had thought. Or warning. She found out which one at noon. She was restocking the guest bathroom when the front door opened and voices entered, Min-ho and another man, speaking in rapid Korean, low and urgent. Daniella went still. She spoke Korean. Her mother had made certain of it, the same way she had made certain Daniella spoke Yoruba and English without apology. You are not one thing, her mother had said. Don't let anyone make you one thing. She pressed close to the hallway wall and listened. The other man was angry. She's been here too long. Soo-Yeon says she's noticed things. Soo-Yeon is paranoid. Soo-Yeon is careful. There's a difference. The handover is in 4 days, Min-ho. 4 days. We cannot have a loose variable walking around with access to this floor. A pause, long enough to hurt. She's a cleaning woman, Min-ho said. She's a witness. Another pause. When Min-ho spoke again, his voice had shifted, lower, deliberate, the voice of a man choosing each word like a step across unstable ground. I'll handle it. Daniella's back was against the wall. Her heart was a fist behind her ribs. She had approximately 4 seconds before the hallway became visible from the living room entrance. She moved, silently, quickly, back into the guest bathroom. She placed a fresh towel on the rack with hands that refused to shake. She heard footsteps. She heard a door close. She heard Min-ho's voice, directly outside the bathroom door. Daniella. She opened the door. He was alone. He looked at her for a long moment, his jaw tight, something working behind his eyes that she couldn't read. You heard that, he said. It wasn't a question. She said nothing. How much Korean do you speak? She held his gaze. Enough. Something moved across his face. Not surprise, not anger. Something that looked impossibly like relief. He reached into his jacket pocket and held out a folded piece of paper. She didn't take it. It's an address, he said quietly. Go there tonight. Tell them I sent you. Don't come back here. Why would I trust you? Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. Because, he said, and for the first time since she had known him, something cracked open behind his composure, something raw and exhausted and real. I'm the one who sent you those messages last night. The paper hung between them. And because Soo-Yeon isn't my fiancé, his eyes didn't leave hers. She's the reason 3 people are already dead. Daniella took the paper. Not because she trusted him. Because she had run the calculations in the 30 seconds since he'd spoken, and every outcome that didn't involve taking the paper ended the same way, badly and quietly, and with nobody asking questions about the cleaning woman who stopped showing up. She tucked it into her uniform pocket without looking at it. The address, Min-ho said, his voice barely above a whisper now. Tonight, before 8, don't tell anyone where you're going. Who will be there? People who can keep you safe. That's not an answer. His jaw tightened. It's the only one I can give you right now. She studied him. Up close, without the performance of the dinner party, without Soo-Yeon's presence refracting everything, he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. The kind of tired that accumulates over years, over choices. The handover, she said. What is it? Something shifted in his eyes. Caution, calculation, then slowly something that might have been respect. You really did hear everything. I told you, I speak enough. He looked at her for 3 full seconds. Then, evidence, documents, transfers, names, everything needed to dismantle the 3 largest trafficking networks operating between Seoul and Lagos. He paused. My organization has been building the case for 2 years. Soo-Yeon found out 6 weeks ago. She's been feeding information to the other side. 6 weeks ago. The exact moment Daniella had arrived. She requested you specifically, Min-ho said, watching her face. From the agency. She'd been watching you for months before that. Your background, your languages, your access to certain communities. He stopped. She wasn't going to use you as a witness, Daniella. She was going to use you as a frame, plant evidence, make it look like the leak came from inside the cleaning staff. The bathroom felt smaller suddenly. The towel she had just folded sat perfectly on the rack, indifferent and white. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I've been watching you be underestimated for 2 months, he said, and I'm done being part of it. She left at 12:43 p.m., 2 hours before her shift was scheduled to end. Mrs. Beek called after her. Daniella said she wasn't feeling well. It was the first lie she had told in this building, and it tasted clean. Outside, she walked 3 blocks before unfolding the paper. The address was in a district she knew, not wealthy, not dangerous, the kind of neighborhood that minded its own business because everyone in it had their own complicated reasons to. Below the address, 4 words in small, precise handwriting. Ask for Sergeant Park Jae-won. Daniella stopped walking. Park. Her mother's name. She told herself it was coincidence. She told herself Seoul had 10 million people, and Park was among the most common surnames on the peninsula. She told herself her pulse was elevated because she had just discovered she'd been used as a pawn in an international criminal operation, not because of 4 letters on a folded piece of paper. She told herself all of this, and then she started walking faster. The building was unremarkable. 3rd floor, no elevator, a door with a buzzer and no nameplate. Daniella pressed the buzzer and waited. The woman who opened the door was in her 50s. Short hair, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, the particular posture of someone who had spent decades being the most competent person in every room she entered. She looked at Daniella. Daniella looked at her. Something ancient and seismic moved through the space between them. Minho sent me, Daniella said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I'm looking for Sergeant Park Jae-won. The woman removed her glasses from her forehead. Her hands, Daniella noticed, were shaking slightly. I'm Jae-won, the woman said, and I know who sent you. She paused. I've been waiting 11 years to open this door. I don't understand. I know, Jae-won stepped back. Come inside. There's something I need to show you before I explain anything else. Inside, the apartment was all function. Maps pinned to boards, monitors, folders stacked with the specific organization of controlled urgency. 2 other people sat at laptops and didn't look up. Jae-won led her to a table in the back. On it, a single photograph in a clear evidence sleeve. A young woman, laughing, caught mid-motion somewhere bright. Nigerian, early 20s, spectacularly alive in the way that photographs of the dead always were. Do you know her? Jae-won asked. Daniella's mouth went dry. That's my mother, she said. Before I was born, where did you get this? Jae-won sat down. She folded her hands with the care of someone who had rehearsed this moment and still found it insufficient. Your mother didn't meet your father by accident, she said. She was working for us, an intelligence partnership between Nigerian federal agents and Korean organized crime task force 28 years ago. She was the best operative we had. A pause. When she went dark and resurfaced in the United States with a daughter and a new name, we let her go. She'd earned it. The room was very quiet. She knew, Daniella said, not a question. She knew everything, including that one day if the network we'd been chasing ever resurfaced. Jae-won's eyes were steady, but not unmoved. She left your name with us, said if it ever came to it, you'd be ready. Daniella sat down because her legs decided she should. Her mother, who made her learn Korean and Yoruba, who taught her to read rooms, who told her dignity you keep and patience you spend, who had placed her, without her knowledge, like a chess piece on a board that had been set up before Daniella was born. The handover, Daniella said slowly, Minho's evidence. We need one more piece, one witness with direct access to Soo-Yeon's communications. Jae-won looked at her steadily. Someone who might have seen a burner phone, red case, gold emblem. The air left Daniella's lungs. I saw it, she whispered. I saw the message. Jae-won leaned forward. Can you remember exactly what it said? And Daniella, 27 years old, daughter of a woman she thought she knew, employee of a man she was only beginning to understand, pawn turned player in a game she had never been told she was in, opened her mouth to answer. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. Unknown number, the same one from last night. She knows you went to Jae-won. Get out of that building right now, both of you. Daniella looked up. Jaewon was already on her feet, reaching for something in her desk drawer, her face stripped of everything except urgency. How did they? Daniella started. Because, Jaewon said, pulling out a weapon with the practiced ease of muscle memory, her eyes moving to the door. One of the two people in this room isn't who I think they are. The laptops kept running. Neither of the two agents looked up. Daniella didn't move. Jaewon had told her with a single sharp look to stay seated, to look calm, to behave like someone who didn't know the walls had just closed in. She was getting good at that. Jaewon walked to the kitchenette with the unhurried steps of someone making tea, but her eyes never stopped moving, sliding between the two agents at their laptops, with the precision of a woman running diagnostics in real time. Agent 1, male, mid-30s, had been typing steadily since Daniella arrived. Hadn't glanced up once. Agent 2, female, late 20s, had shifted in her seat twice in the last 60 seconds. Small movements. The kind a body makes when it's managing adrenaline. Daniella watched Jaewon watch them. She thought about her mother, about a woman who had spent decades making herself look like less than she was, who had passed that particular survival skill to her daughter like an inheritance wrapped in ordinary lessons. Don't perform calm, she used to say, become it. There's a difference and people can feel which one you're doing. Daniella breathed, she became it. Her phone was in her lap, screen down. She tilted it up by millimeters and typed with one thumb without looking. To the unknown number, which one? 3 seconds. Your side of the room. She used your arrival as cover to activate something. Left hand, under the desk. Daniella's eyes moved to Agent 2, without moving her head. Left hand, under the desk. A small black device, the size of a lighter, pressed to the underside of the table with what looked like putty. Daniella had cleaned enough surfaces to recognize something that didn't belong on one. She stood up. I need the bathroom, she said. Jaewon's eyes snapped to her. Daniella looked back with the steadiness of a woman communicating in a language that needed no words. Jaewon's gaze dropped, almost imperceptibly, toward Agent 2's side of the room. 1 second. Jaewon put down the kettle. Down, she said. What happened next took 11 seconds. Agent 2 lunged for the device. Jaewon was faster, 30 years of field experience against youth, and experience 1, pinning the woman's wrist against the desk with a force that sent the laptop crashing. Agent 1 was on his feet, shouting into a radio. Daniella had already moved to the far wall, away from the door, the way her body somehow knew to do despite nobody ever teaching her building-clearing protocol. The device never activated. Later, she would learn it was a signal jammer, that it would have cut communications to the task force network at the precise moment the handover documents were transmitted, that the 4-minute window it created would have been enough for Soo-Yeon's contact to intercept, corrupt, and reroute 3 years of evidence into nothing. But that was later. Right now, Agent 2 was on the floor with her hands secured, Jaewon was on her radio, and Daniella was standing against the wall with her heart conducting something loud and irregular inside her chest. Her phone buzzed again. Leave through the stairwell. I'm outside. Minho was parked half a block from the building's side exit, engine running, wearing the expression of a man who had spent the last 4 hours preventing several catastrophes simultaneously. Daniella got in. She didn't thank him. She wasn't sure what she felt yet. Gratitude and fury were occupying the same space, the way they do when someone has protected you from a danger they were partially responsible for you being in. He seemed to understand this. He didn't speak first. They drove for 6 minutes before she did. How long have you known about me? She asked. The real reason I was placed there. His hands stayed steady on the wheel. 4 weeks in. I ran your background when Soo-Yeon pushed too hard to keep you on. I found the connection to Jaewon's unit. He paused. I found your mother's file. And you said nothing. I was trying to figure out if you were a liability or an asset. He glanced at her. I was wrong to frame it that way. I'm sorry. It was a direct apology. No dressing, no performance. She filed it away and kept going. Soo-Yeon, how long has she been working against you? 8 months. His voice was controlled, but something underneath it wasn't. I brought her in because I trusted her history. Her family had been affected by the networks we were dismantling. I thought that made her committed. A beat. I didn't know her brother had already made a different arrangement with the other side. She wasn't trying to destroy the evidence to protect the network. Daniella turned to look at him. She was protecting her brother, he said quietly. The city moved past the windows, ordinary and indifferent. Where is she now? Daniella asked. Being picked up, he said it without satisfaction. She'll face charges, so will her brother. He stopped at a light. It doesn't feel the way you think it will. When something you built gets hollowed out from the inside by someone he stopped again. Someone you loved, Daniella said. He didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. The light changed. Jaewon called at 7 p.m. Daniella was sitting in a safe house that smelled like instant coffee and industrial carpet, eating rice from a container someone had left on the counter. Min-ho was in the next room, on his own call. The handover completed, Jaewon said. 40 minutes ago, all documents transmitted and verified. The network leadership have warrants issued across 4 countries. A pause, and when she spoke again, something in her voice had loosened, the professional scaffolding dropping just slightly to reveal the woman underneath. Your mother would have been proud. Daniella put her fork down. She knew this day might come, Jaewon continued. She made us promise that if it did, if you were ever pulled into this, we would tell you the full truth afterward, every part. Tell me, Daniella said. Jaewon was quiet for 3 seconds. Your father didn't leave, she said. He was taken. 11 years ago, when the network identified your mother's past and came looking for leverage. She spent the years after building a life that looked small enough that they'd stop watching. Her voice was careful and kind in equal measure. He's alive, Daniella. We found him 6 months ago. He's been the reason we pushed so hard to close this case before the end of the year. The room didn't spin. The room stayed entirely still. Daniella had believed her father left because that was the story her mother had given her, wrapped in dignity and presented as fact. She had spent 22 years constructing herself around that absence, becoming self-sufficient, becoming unshakable, becoming the woman who kept her eyes down and her emotions in check because the alternative was an opening she couldn't afford. She pressed her wrist against her thigh, cool the pulse, slow the tide. Where is he? She whispered. Before Jaewon could answer, the door to the safe house opened. Min-ho stood in the doorway. Behind him, a man she had never met. Tall, Nigerian, late 50s with tired eyes and her exact jawline. He looked at her, the way people look at something they had stopped letting themselves believe in. Daniella stood up slowly. The phone was still at her ear. She heard Jaewon say softly, He asked to be there when you found out. We couldn't say no. The man took 1 step forward and stopped, as if he wasn't sure he had the right, as if he had forfeited the right and knew it and was asking anyway. Daniella, he said. Her name in his mouth sounded like something he had been saying in private for years. She had held herself together through mockers and criminals and revelation after revelation. She had spent her patience like a currency and kept her dignity intact in rooms designed to strip it. She crossed the distance between them in 4 steps. And for the first time in 2 months, in 22 years, she stopped performing calm. Later, much later, when her father was asleep in the next room and Jaewon had signed off, and the case was officially closed, Daniella sat in the kitchen doorway watching Min-ho make tea with the focused inefficiency of a man who didn't do it often. What happens now? She asked. He set 2 cups on the counter, turned around. For the case, trials, testimony, months of process. He paused. For you, that depends on Jaewon's next question. What question? He looked at her steadily. Something open in his face that hadn't been there 2 months ago. Something that had been excavated gradually, the way these things are, by proximity, by shared danger, by the particular intimacy of being seen clearly by someone in a room where everyone else looked past you. "She's going to ask if you want to join the unit," he said. "Officially, you have 4 languages, a background nobody would suspect, and instincts that kept you alive through something that has ended careers of trained operatives." He picked up both cups and crossed the room toward her. "She's going to ask." He held out the cup. "And I'm going to ask something else," he said quietly. "When this is over, when you've had time, I'm going to ask if I can." His phone rang. He glanced at it. His expression shifted just slightly, just enough. "I have to take this." He stepped away. She heard his voice drop into that low, controlled register she now recognized as the one he used when something was wrong. He came back 30 seconds later. The openness was gone. In its place, that careful, deliberate stillness that preceded bad news. "Min-ho," she said, "what is it?" He set his cup down slowly. "Soo-Yeon," he said. She wasn't picked up. Daniella went still. She was gone before the team arrived. Her brother, too. He met her eyes. And the last location ping on her phone. He turned the screen toward her. It was their street.